Welcome to the deep dive. What we've got for you today is, well, it's a snapshot of the trucking world right now, and it's a wild one.
Mm.
Think severe weather slamming key routes, a look at the trucks of tomorrow packed with tech, a Supreme Court ruling with real teeth, a pardon that's got everyone talking,
Yeah,
new tariffs shaking up the economics, and even the future of the USPS fleet hanging in the balance.
exactly. The range of sources you've shared really highlights the multifaceted pressures on the industry. It's not just about driving from point A to point B anymore. There's a whole web of factors at play.
Absolutely. Our mission here is to cut through the noise, pull out what really matters from all this information, and, give you a clearer picture of the forces shaping trucking today.
Um,
Okay, let's dive straight into the deep end, starting with the weather, because, well, Mother Nature is definitely making her presence felt.
oh, yeah. We're seeing some significant and disruptive severe storms sweeping across a large part of the country, specifically the Midwest and the South.
Mm-hmm.
The reports are focused on Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Illinois, and extending into parts of Oklahoma and Mississippi. This isn't just a little rain. It's serious stuff.
And these aren't just minor roads getting hit, right? We're talking about major freight corridors, the lifelines of the industry.
Exactly.
Routes like I-40, I-55, and I-70 are facing closures, major slowdowns, and tragically numerous accidents. It's really impacting the flow of goods.
What's particularly concerning are the immediate dangers for the drivers out there. Think about the reduced visibility in heavy rain, the very real risk of hydroplaning on standing water,
Yeah,
and
terrifying.
debris being tossed around by high winds. There was a quote from one driver about 40-mile-per-hour winds shaking their trailer like it was nothing that really puts the power of these storms into perspective.
It paints a frightening picture, and the impact radiates outwards, doesn't it? Warehouses and terminals in these regions are facing disruptions,
Right.
leading to canceled loads, frantic rerouting efforts, and carriers having to issue widespread service alerts. It's like a logistical domino effect.
Right. And beyond the delivery schedules, the sources give us a crucial insight into the human element. We're hearing from experienced drivers drawing parallels to the chaos of hurricane season.
Wow.
Stark warnings being shared with those newer to the road, and the difficult calculus drivers have to make between finding a safe place to park and potentially losing income versus pressing on for storm pay.
That's a tough call.
It is. And dispatchers are in the thick of it, constantly juggling routes and dealing with, understandable frustration from both shippers and receivers. And the emergency services message is blunt and vital. Turn around, don't drown.
Yeah.
The risk of vehicles being swept away in floodwaters is very, very real.
It really brings home the immense pressure on everyone involved in keeping things moving. And you'd expect that in this day and age, technology would have this completely under control, right? All the apps and real-time data.
Well, that raises a really interesting point about our reliance on tech. While trucking apps and digital navigation systems are undoubtedly useful tools, what the sources reveal is that they often can't keep pace with the rapidly changing conditions on the ground during these severe weather events. It's almost surprising, but we're still seeing drivers relying on old-school CB radio chatter and even informal Facebook groups to get the most up-to-the-minute information.
Really? CBs and Facebook?
Yeah. It suggests that in these fast-evolving situations, those informal networks can be surprisingly effective, maybe even more so than some of the official tech at times.
And you get a sense of the sheer scale of the disruption when you hear about truck stops completely overflowing, creating what one force called a survival mode atmosphere
Yeah, just packed.
for drivers just trying to find a safe haven until the storm passes.
Ultimately, the core message emerging from all of this is the absolute priority of safety. As one of the sources succinctly put it, freight can wait. It's a powerful reminder that no delivery schedule is worth risking a driver's life or their equipment.
Okay, so from battling the elements, let's steer towards something that's also generating a lot of buzz and change. The brand new 2026 Peterbilt 579. This sounds like a significant leap into the future of trucking.
It definitely appears to be a substantial step forward, both in terms of the technology it incorporates and its overall design philosophy.
Right.
A major focus has been on aerodynamic improvements,
Right.
with Peterbilt claiming a 7% increase in fuel efficiency, thanks to features like a redesigned hood, those sleek mirror cams replacing traditional mirrors, and an enclosed underbody.
A 7% improvement in fuel efficiency. I mean, that's a massive saving over the long haul. But I noticed the article mentioned a bit of a trade-off there, didn't it? Some might miss the classic chrome aesthetic.
Exactly. It highlights that ongoing balancing act within the industry between the push for greater efficiency
Mm.
and the, appreciation for traditional truck styling. What's really grabbing attention, though, is the integration of a 15-inch customizable digital display right in the cab.
Huge screen.
Yeah. It's not just about tracking speed anymore. This is a central hub for things like predictive maintenance alerts, integrated routing and traffic updates, control over comfort settings, and even voice commands through Alexa.
Alexa in a semi.
Yeah.
That's a sign of how integrated technology is becoming. But the article also hinted at the potential for software glitches, which I'm sure is a relatable concern for anyone who's relied on complex tech.
Absolutely. More complexity inevitably introduces more potential points of failure. Yeah. And then we move on to the advanced driver assist systems, ADS, which are becoming increasingly prevalent.
The safety tech.
Right. Things like lane keep assist, adaptive cruise control, automatic emergency braking are all aimed at enhancing safety. However, the inclusion of fatigue detection cameras and the fact that the data they collect can be reported back to fleet managers, that's definitely raising some questions.
Yeah, that's where you see the conversation around increased surveillance really taking hold. It's a delicate balance between improving safety and potentially impacting a driver's sense of autonomy and privacy.
Precisely. And the interior of the 579 has also seen some notable upgrades designed to improve life on the road. A larger sleeper berth, more power outlets, including those USB-C ports we all rely on,
Finally.
an optional Murphy bed for maximizing space, and even adjustable LED mood lighting. They're clearly trying to make the cab a more comfortable and functional living space.
Definitely sounds like it. Though, as you pointed out earlier, the continued absence of a standard built-in refrigerator is still a bit of a puzzle.
Still waiting on that one.
It feels like a no-brainer for long-haul drivers. But what's really interesting is the range of reactions to this new truck. You've got the seasoned owner-operators who see it as almost a spaceship and feel like some of the traditional character of trucking is being lost.
While on the other hand, company drivers often express more enthusiasm for the potential for a smoother ride and those significant fuel savings. And then there's the segment of drivers who are inherently skeptical of new technology, viewing all those cameras as a tattletale on wheels.
Ah, tattletale on wheels. I like that.
It really underscores the diverse perspectives and priorities within the trucking community. Newer drivers, it seems, are often just appreciative of reliable phone charging and a more comfortable driving experience.
It all reflects this broader industry trend, doesn't it? The major manufacturers are clearly prioritizing efficiency, enhanced safety features, and acknowledging the growing role of automation. Peterbilt's positioning with this new model seems to be directly addressing these areas, especially with the increasing presence of electric vehicle startups in the market.
Yeah, competition's heating up.
The fact that large fleets are already placing pre-orders speaks volumes about where the industry sees things heading. But it does bring us back to that fundamental question we touched on earlier. In an increasingly automated future, what will the role of the human driver ultimately be?
That's the central, unresolved question hanging over the entire industry. The 2026 Peterbilt 579, while undeniably impressive in its technological advancements and focus on efficiency, also serves as a tangible reminder of the rapid and sometimes unsettling pace of change within trucking.
Moving from the future of vehicles to a legal development with potentially significant ramifications for drivers, the Supreme Court's involvement in the issue of CBD use among truckers.
Yes, this concerns the situation where truck drivers have been terminated after using CBD products that were advertised as THC-free, but still resulted in positive drug tests for THC.
Which is devastating for a driver's career.
Absolutely. The specific case involves a trucker who is suing a CBD company under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, or RICO.
ORCO, that's a law we typically associate with organized crime. The fact that the Supreme Court is allowing a lawsuit under this act to proceed against a CBD company is quite a significant development, isn't it?
It is very significant. It opens the door to potentially much more serious legal consequences for CBD companies, including the possibility of federal lawsuits and, if found liable under RICO, the prospect of having to pay triple damages.
Triple damages, wow.
Yeah. This could very well lead to a wave of similar lawsuits from other truckers who have faced the same predicament.
And from what I've read, the reaction within the trucking community has been overwhelmingly positive. There were quotes like, finally, suggesting a lot of pent-up frustration on this issue.
Absolutely. There's a widespread awareness among truck drivers about the inherent risks associated with using even purportedly THC-free CBD products.
Right, the labels can be misleading.
Exactly. The reality is that even trace amounts of THC can trigger a positive drug test, leading to the immediate suspension or termination of their commercial driver's license and their livelihood. So the possibility of having a legal avenue to seek recourse against companies that may be misrepresenting their products is being seen as a major step forward.
What about the CBD industry itself? What's their take on the Supreme Court decision? Are they worried?
Predictably, the reaction across the CBD industry appears to be quite varied. Some companies are likely very concerned about the potential for significant financial liabilities and reputational damage. Others, perhaps those with more rigorous testing and quality control measures in place, might actually welcome increased regulatory clarity and standardization that could emerge as a result of this legal precedent.
Interesting point.
Legal experts are indeed calling this a landmark moment that could force a significant shift in how CBD companies operate and are held accountable for their product claims.
So what kind of impact this have on the trucking industry in the near future? Stricter policies, maybe?
We might see trucking companies becoming even more cautious and potentially implementing stricter policies regarding the use of CBD products by their drivers, regardless of the legal status at the state level or product labeling.
Makes sense.
Conversely, this legal pressure could incentivize CBD companies to significantly enhance their testing protocols and provide much greater transparency regarding the actual composition of their products.
So better testing, clearer labels, hopefully.
That's the hope. The fundamental message for truckers remains: exercise extreme caution with any CBD product, irrespective of its advertised claims, as it still carries a considerable risk to their careers. However, this ruling now offers a potential legal pathway for those who have suffered negative consequences due to misleading product information.
Okay, let's pivot again, this time into the political arena and an action that's definitely stirring up controversy. The presidential pardon of Nikola founder Trevor Milton.
Yes. The pardon granted to Trevor Milton, the founder of Nikola Motors, who was convicted of fraud related to his statements about the company's electric truck technology, has certainly generated a significant amount of discussion and debate.
For anyone who might not be entirely familiar with the backstory, could you give us a quick overview of Nikola's initial promises and why Milton ended up being convicted? I remember that truck rolling downhill.
That's the infamous one, yeah. Nikola Motors burst onto the scene with bold claims about its development of hydrogen-powered and electric semi-trucks. However, concerns arose when demonstrations of their technology appeared to be misleading,
Very misleading.
like that video that seemed to show a Nikola truck moving under its own power, when in reality it was reportedly just rolling downhill. Ultimately, Milton was convicted in 2022 on charges of wire and securities fraud for making false and misleading statements to investors, which induced them to purchase Nikola stock.
And he cashed out big time before it all fell apart.
He did. He personally benefited by selling a significant portion of his own stock before the company's valuation declined.
And now he's received a presidential pardon. What are the arguments being made in favor of this pardon, and what have been the primary reactions to it?
Well, the justifications offered by those supporting the pardon often portray Milton as a, quote, visionary entrepreneur who faced excessive regulatory scrutiny. Milton himself has publicly expressed his gratitude and maintained that his conviction was unjust.
Right.
However, the reaction from investors who lost money as a result of his misleading statements is understandably one of anger and a feeling of having been defrauded. What's particularly relevant for our listeners in the trucking industry is the stark contrast being drawn between the strict accountability that truck drivers face for infractions like logbook errors
Yeah, exactly.
and the pardon of someone convicted of significant financial fraud. This has led to a widespread perception of a double standard in the application of justice.
That sense of a two-tiered system of justice seems to be a central theme in the reactions. What's the broader industry sentiment been like, beyond just the investors?
It's been quite divided. In some corners, particularly within the tech and investment communities, there's a view of Milton as a maverick innovator who is perhaps unfairly targeted. However, within the established trucking and logistics sectors, there's considerable resentment.
Why is that?
Well, the Nikola saga, with its exaggerated claims and ultimately fraudulent representations, arguably damaged the credibility of genuine efforts to advance electric truck technology. Legitimate companies in the electric vehicle space have had to work harder to overcome the skepticism created by the Nikola episode.
So it made things harder for the real innovators.
Potentially, yes.
Hmm,
So the core takeaway regarding this pardon seems to be this feeling that there are different sets of rules for different people, particularly based on wealth and influence.
exactly. For professional drivers who are subject to stringent regulations and face significant consequences for even relatively minor violations, the pardon of a high-profile individual convicted of serious financial misconduct can be deeply disheartening.
Yeah, it reinforces the perception that the scales of justice are not equally balanced.
Let's shift our focus now to another area where government policy is directly impacting the trucking industry. The recently implemented tariffs announced by President Trump on April 2nd, 2025. This sounds like it could have far-reaching economic effects.
It certainly has the potential to. President Trump has enacted a 10% across-the-board tariff on all imported goods. In addition to this, there are higher tariffs being applied to specific categories.
On top of the 10%.
Yes, including a 34% tariff on goods from China, 20% on goods from the European Union, and a 25% tariff on imported vehicles and automotive parts, which went into effect the following day on April 3rd.
Okay, 25% on parts. That's going to hurt. So what are the immediate economic consequences we can anticipate as a result of these new tariffs? Inflation.
The most immediate and widespread effect is likely to be an increase in the prices that consumers pay for imported goods.
Yeah.
As the cost of bringing these goods into the country rises due to the tariffs, those costs will likely be passed on to the consumers.
So yeah, inflation.
This increased cost of goods can then contribute to overall inflation and potentially reduce consumer spending, which in turn could lead to a decrease in the demand for freight transportation services.
Can you give us a more tangible example of how these tariffs might affect everyday life and specifically the trucking industry? Like, where will truckers feel it most?
Okay, consider a major retailer like Walmart. A significant portion of the goods they sell are imported. A 10% tariff on all those imports means that the prices on store shelves are likely to go up.
Right.
For truckers, think about the cost of maintaining their trucks. If a critical engine component or a set of tires is imported from overseas, that 25% tariff on vehicle parts could translate directly into significantly higher repair and maintenance bills for owner-operators and fleet managers alike.
Ouch. That hits the bottom line directly.
Right.
So who are likely to be the winners and losers in the short term as these tariffs take effect?
Well, the stated intention from the administration is that these tariffs will level the playing field for domestic industries and encourage a resurgence in American manufacturing.
Okay, that's the argument for them.
Right. However, the general consensus among economists is that these tariffs will primarily function as a tax on American consumers, potentially slowing down economic growth and creating strains in international trade relationships.
So bad for the economy overall.
That's the worry from many economists. Some have even suggested that these tariffs could exacerbate or accelerate a potential freight recession. And as you might expect, many in the trucking industry are concerned that a decrease in freight volume, coupled with rising operational costs like fuel and repairs, will disproportionately impact their bottom line.
What kind of immediate on-the-ground impact can truckers expect to see in their daily operations? Delays, less freight.
We could see a slowdown in activity at ports as the volume of imports potentially decreases or faces more extensive customs procedures. Truck repair shops that rely on imported parts are likely to be concerned about the increased costs, which they may have to pass on to their customers.
Yeah, the repair costs again.
And freight brokers are already signaling potential volatility in shipping rates as the market adjusts to these new tariffs. For truck drivers, the immediate outlook suggests the possibility of reduced freight demand, higher expenses for maintaining their equipment, and potentially longer delays at border crossings.
So uncertainty and higher costs, basically.
In the short term, yes, that seems to be the dominant theme.
Finally, let's discuss the uncertainty surrounding the U.S. Postal Service's ambitious plan to transition its aging fleet to electric vehicles. This was a major initiative with significant implications, wasn't it?
It was indeed a very substantial plan, with an estimated budget of around $3 billion aimed at replacing a large portion of their existing fleet, potentially up to 165,000 vehicles, with electric vehicles.
Huge number.
Yeah. The stated goals were to improve operational efficiency, enhance safety, and align with broader clean energy and sustainability objectives.
But it seems like those plans might now be facing some significant headwinds. What's the current status of the USPS electrification effort? Is it still happening?
The plan is currently undergoing a reevaluation. There are growing concerns about the overall costs associated with the transition, and with shifts in the political landscape, the level of commitment to the original ambitious goals appears to be wavering.
So it's on pause, basically, or under review.
Under review seems to be the official term. This uncertainty is creating a state of limbo for both the companies that were contracted to supply the new electric vehicles and for the broader manufacturing sector that was gearing up to support this large-scale transition.
And this comes at a time when the broader market for electric vehicles is itself experiencing some signs of a slowdown, right?
That's a very relevant point. As major automotive manufacturers are reporting a deceleration in the growth of EV demand and facing increasing production costs, the potential scaling back or cancellation of this substantial USPS order could have significant knock-on effects across the entire electric vehicle ecosystem.
What are some of the different perspectives emerging in response to this potential shift in the USPS electrification plans? Truckers must have thoughts.
Within the trucking industry, there's a degree of skepticism, perhaps rooted in past experiences with large-scale government initiatives that haven't fully come to fruition.
We've heard this before, kind of thing.
Exactly. There's also a concern that if a major government agency like the USPS reconsiders its commitment to electrification, other government entities and large private fleets might follow suit, potentially slowing down the overall adoption of electric vehicles in the commercial sector.
Right. It could set a precedent.
Manufacturers who made significant investments in anticipation of this large USPS contract could face substantial financial losses and might even consider legal action. Environmental advocacy groups are understandably disappointed at the prospect of a major government initiative aimed at reducing transportation emissions being curtailed, although some acknowledge the logistical and financial complexities involved.
So what kind of response might we see from the industry if this USPS plan is indeed significantly altered or abandoned? Will manufacturers just stop making the trucks?
Some manufacturers who were awarded contracts might continue with their production plans, maybe at a reduced rate, hoping that the situation could still change, while others will likely pause or scale back their operations to avoid incurring unnecessary costs.
Makes sense.
Trucking contractors who were anticipating the deployment of new electric vehicles for their USPS delivery routes are now facing uncertainty about the future of their contracts and the long-term reliability of government commitments in this area.
Ultimately, does this potential reversal represent a broader step back from electric vehicles, or perhaps a more pragmatic reassessment of the economic and logistical realities of such a large-scale transition? What's the bigger picture here?
It's a complex question with no easy answer.
Yeah.
It could certainly be interpreted as a setback for the widespread adoption of electric vehicles in the transportation sector. Alternatively, it could be viewed as a necessary course correction, driven by unforeseen financial challenges and potential shortcomings in the initial planning stages.
So maybe it was too ambitious too soon.
That's one interpretation. Regardless of the underlying reasons, the final outcome of the USPS electric vehicle plan will undoubtedly have significant and lasting implications for the future of transportation and the pace at which large fleets embrace electrification.
Well, this has truly been a deep dive into a really dynamic and complex moment for the trucking industry. It's clear to you, our listener, that you're operating in a landscape shaped by a multitude of powerful and often unpredictable forces.
Absolutely. What's so striking is the interconnectedness of all these seemingly disparate issues. From the immediate disruptions caused by severe weather events to the long-term transformations driven by technological innovation, legal precedents, shifting economic policies, and evolving governmental priorities.
It's all linked.
The trucking landscape is in a constant state of flux.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close, here's something to really think about. Consider how all the various factors we've explored today, from those immediate weather emergencies that can halt traffic in an instant, to the more gradual but equally profound technological and economic shifts. How will they collectively shape not just your future in the trucking industry, but also your understanding of the intricate systems that underpin the movement of all the goods we rely on every single day? It really underscores the adaptability and resilience that are so essential in such a constantly evolving environment.